Hello and welcome in.
Please do not leave your luggage unattended on the station.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show. Yeah. Woo. Okay. We are back with another episode of Guerilla Sports Off Field with Liv Moods, BK to my whatever direction this is. I'm all backwards.
your
BK
left.
over here in the middle, holding it down. And also Nathan Jackson, or as I like to call him, Nathaniel, just to get on his nerves.
That's right.
How are we
That's
feeling,
it.
fellas? I want to, before we jump into all things week 2, Sunday slate, lots of games there. And also, of course, Denver Broncos versus the Pittsburgh Steelers, aka Bo Nix against TJ Watt. I'm a little scared, but we'll get into that in a second. I do want to recap a little bit of the Thursday night football game and obviously talk a little bit about the Rocky Mountain Showdown, CU, CSU. We know that traditionally in Colorado, that is a big game. And now it's even bigger because CSU saying they want to murder CU. Not my words, theirs. It'll be an interesting little showdown. But first, Thursday night football. And BK and I actually went back and forth a little bit on Twitter last night. Obviously, besides the fact that Tua was a turnover machine, and this Bills team looks way more dominant than I had anticipated they would. They're looking like they could very comfortably sit atop the AFC East this season. Besides all of that, Tua, obviously, with a pretty brutal hit. And BK and I went back and forth. And I think before I let you guys jump in and talk about what we saw with Tua in that game, I was more coming from the angle last night of forget how he should have slid or what he did wrong. I am genuinely becoming concerned for his brain health and longevity moving forward. We've seen Tua take some pretty nasty blows to the head and have some pretty bad concussions. And I, of course, am now getting worried about what the future of his career looks like. And then screw the career. I'm also just worried about him as a human and his health in general. So I'll let you guys, I kind of know where BK stands on this. So Nate, I'll kind of give your feedback. I'll get your feedback first on what we saw from the Thursday night football game, and then maybe your thoughts on the future of Tua.
Yeah, ass whooping there in Miami. 31-10. Was that the final there, guys?
I believe
Does Josh
so.
Allen have ownership stake in the Dolphins? Because it seems like it.
Yeah, and Tua is I think 1-6 career against the Bills as well. So he
tough.
hasn't fared well against the Bills, and then Josh Allen does well in Miami. But the night was overshadowed clearly by Tua's concussion, right? And so I want to chat about that real quick because the play itself, he didn't need to lower his head and do what he did there. And so he has another concussion on national TV. He loses consciousness again. He goes into the fencing in response again. You see him have a traumatic brain injury in front of all of us again. And now there's a national conversation about what's best for him. Again, even though none of us know what's really going on in his brain. What we do know is that he's had 3, I think, high-profile concussions.
Official, the one right before that Thursday one that we saw on that Sunday against the Bills.
And that was all last season, right?
The season prior.
Ago, but
Yeah, 2022.
4 in less than 2 calendar years, because that was September 25th was that first one against the Bills that wasn't diagnosed, and then 4 days later. So less than 2 calendar years, he's had 4 that we know.
Did he have one?
Plus 1.
Did he have one last year?
I don't believe so.
I think he had a relatively healthy season last year.
Okay, that's a great sign, right? So it's not, it obviously didn't dog him last year, but at the same time, certain brains are more susceptible to getting those injuries than others. I remember being in high school, and sometimes there would be a couple of guys out there who just every time they seemed to get hit in the head, they were like, whereas some guys were just like, you didn't even phase them. So there's a genetic component, I think, to it. But also there's this thing that goes on in football where the more we try to protect the quarterback, the more unfit he becomes for the action outside of the pocket. Now, Tua is not made for that smoke, but he lowered his head as if he was. This guy's, his body type, his size, his strength, he can't hold a candle to the rest of the guys on the field. The rest of the guys are killers. They're meat missiles. And these quarterbacks just stand there back behind the pocket and are protected by 1,500 pounds of meat in front of them and the refs and the rules. So it creates this guy back there who is not like the other guys. And so when he starts believing he is in the moment and starts running around and lowering his head, that kind of stuff can happen. That's kind of, be careful what you wish for when you create this delicate quarterback flower guy who you have to protect at all costs. His body type is not going to be able to withstand those. And you hope that he has the wherewithal to get down, to understand that. But in the moment, a guy like Tua who has pride and he wants to, he wants to be a man out there. He wants to prove his manhood. He puts his head down. You didn't even have to do that. He's not ready he's not prepared physically for those moments. And the result is another concussion on national TV. And hopefully he does what's right for him and his family.
Agreed.
Yeah,
BK.
and that was sort of where I was coming from, Liv, is he knows that this has plagued him, just like a guy that's got a knee or an ankle. I know it's
Absolutely.
a different thing, but like if you know that you're vulnerable to something, you're going to treat things differently. And so for him to run and get that first down was great, but he was so far past the marker. And so I'm wondering, does he have that lack of field awareness? Because we were like, oh,
Totally.
DeMar Hamlin hit him. DeMar Hamlin didn't hit him. DeMar Hamlin basically received him almost as Tua was initiating contact. And that's great if you're Derrick Henry and you're looking for guys to run over. But for Tua, just dive. I'm not saying slide. You didn't have to slide there. You can dive forward, similar to the play where Bo Nix and the bad spot Sunday against the Seahawks, and they had to challenge it, and it was overturned. But he needs to know where the marker is, and then just dive forward, dive down, slide like you're on a head first slide into second base, like you're Ricky Henderson, or like you're on a slip and slide, or whatever it may be. But he just has to have that awareness because of how vulnerable, like you said, some guys' brains are just different. What's interesting, and it hadn't really been brought up, Nate, but you know who the wide receivers coach is there with the Dolphins and has been since Mike McDaniel came over. It's Wes Welker, who was the poster boy for maybe too many concussions throughout his career. He got 2 inside of a month or inside of a couple of weeks here in Denver back in, I want to say it was 2013. And I remember talking to Wes after he was cleared the second time. And I said, this is probably the most football you've missed this late in the year in a long time. And he was like, yes. I go, the rest of your body probably feels great. He goes, yeah, and my head's fine now too. I don't know what that's going to mean down the road. And so I don't know if Wes has any influence over Tua more than anyone else. And Wes played after that. And that's the thing too with Tua. I think he's going to keep, I guess we'll find out, but it's hard to take football players off the field, but this becomes a bigger question about long-term health. He's got 2 small children. So I don't know. There's no easy answers here. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, definitely not. And ultimately it is his decision. I'm sure there's a lot of people today that are having conversations about retirement and should this be his. I personally, of course I think so, because I come at it from the angle of, a sister or a wife or a whoever. And I do worry about the long-term health of Tua, but I also know that that's part of this sport, that there's a lot of dangers when it comes to kind of what their bodies are going through. And I mean, Nate, you've talked about some of the injuries you've personally faced. And I think you just know that with this sport, with this job, this isn't a 9-to-5 cubicle job, right? Where you're a little bit more protected and you're taking care of your body. This is football. So I get it. And ultimately it's his decision. In addition to the conversation with Tua, I do think it's important we talk about the domination that we're seeing from this Buffalo Bills team that lost a lot of pieces in their offseason. And I think most people kind of assumed this would be a year, I know I certainly did, where they kind of digressed. And that's not what we're seeing. It is still early, of course.
It was close Sunday against the Cardinals.
It was.
So
but does that speak, though,
to the AFC Championship game yet?
Yeah, but does that speak more about the Cardinals being better than everybody thought and less about the Bills being because week one, after their performance against the Cardinals, I automatically assumed this Bills team is not as good as people think because a 4-win team from last season almost beat them. But now I'm wondering, okay, does that actually speak more about how talented this Cardinals team and how underestimated this Cardinals team is in comparison? Because we just watched them pretty much dominate a Miami team that, yes, really struggles against, the run game from a defensive perspective, and offensively, it's taken them a second to click. But does that speak more to the Cardinals just kind of being a competitor and kind of being a sleeper team, if you will, than it does the Bills actually being in a year of digression?
Digression.
I
think that you don't know what to make of the first couple of weeks in the NFL.
Of course.
You're gonna see a team like, I wouldn't be surprised that the Saints, who won 47-10. I'm just reminding you of that one.
Thank you so much.
But I wouldn't be surprised if
lose 47-10.
But I wouldn't be surprised exactly if they turn around and get their ass kicked. I don't even know who they're playing, but there's a chance
Cowboys.
At Dallas.
Yeah, so they'll probably get their ass kicked by the Cowboys, right? So it's just weird. Like the first couple weeks, you're trying to they're swinging back and forth, trying to calibrate who's good, who's not. Some teams come out of the gate faster than others. Some teams have a more difficult training camp and are more calloused and ready to go. Some teams had a softer camp. It's just really hard to make sense of what you see in the first couple of weeks until, to me, week 3, week 4, you start to see teams come together and no preseason, lack of preseason reps and training camp and all that. So, but the Bills know how to win. They're a good team, and Josh Allen's been there for a while. He runs the system efficiently and they believe in what they're doing. And so, yes, they lost pieces, but you still have the same kind of philosophy, the same core guys in the locker room for the most part, and the same coaching staff, which is a huge thing. Coming back and knowing exactly what to expect from your routine, from the meeting schedule, from the installation, from the way you're treated, from the way players are handled, travel, all that stuff. Knowing what to expect matters a lot. And I think a lot, when you look at the Broncos and the struggles they've had, a lot of it is because of the turnover in coaching and just a new system, a new leader, a new voice, a new message. Whereas in Buffalo, they've been having the same one. And it might be that the Dolphins aren't that good.
Yeah.
It might be that the Dolphins are going to struggle this year. And so hard to tell what's going on right now.
Agreed. BK?
Yeah, with the Bills, you lose 2 all-pro safeties, but obviously DeMar Hamlin is showing that he's back to whatever trajectory he was on. They've got Taylor Rapp back there. I think the most encouraging thing, because we know they're down 2 linebackers right now, they're not going to get their tackling machine, Matt Milano, back until later in the year, much later in the year. I think early December is kind of the target for him. But because they had the lead, and a lot of that had to do with forcing those turnovers and then the pick 6, that allowed Von Miller to return to form. And obviously, there's plenty of Von Miller fans that are watching us, and certainly here nearby, I've got probably more Von Miller autographs behind me than anybody else, just from working with him through his charities and stuff. But it was good to see that, and we definitely didn't see it 2 years ago. Von's hurt. Last year, he just didn't look the same. That kind of changes your team. I mean, I don't know what to expect the entire year, but we saw that Von's still in pretty darn good shape as he went in with the shirtless presser and probably is going to get a letter from the league wearing a hat. Am I right, Nate? Promoting his chicken farm, but I think he's willing to take that hit to get the promotion out there. But we saw, because you can go back and I remember when DeMarcus Ware was here and had such a really good year. I want to say either in his first or second year here, but he had, I think, double-digit sacks, right? Reggie White, Reggie White had a few, but Lawrence Taylor, go through all of the great pass rushers, Julius Peppers, who just went into the Hall of Fame. Every one of those dudes, after age 33, had a year or two, 33, 34, 30, where they had kind of a renaissance year, a 10-plus sack year. Jason Taylor in Miami. The list is long of those guys. Bruce Smith, of course, in Buffalo. And so I think that maybe we'll see that from Vaughn, that this wasn't just a Thursday night, the lights are on, but that Vaughn has 10, 12 sacks and is a big key to what the Bills are doing. And that changes kind of the dynamic of that team.
A lot of that depends, too, on what the Bills offense can do, because, Vaughn comes out there and the Bills have a nice lead, and that the Dolphins are going to have to go and drop back and throw the ball. You turn them into a one-dimensional offense who has to score points to catch up. Then you can kind of, as a defensive play caller, just kind of pin your ears back and send your guys after them. And Von Miller's the best in the world at that. So, maybe he doesn't love the run stuffing as much anymore, but he'll be able to beat any tackle on the planet on a one-on-one situation.
Love it. Okay, so Thursday Night Football, crazy turn of events. Obviously, like you guys have mentioned many times, it's hard to be able to tell. I actually was watching the Amazon, the coverage post game, and one of them said, "This is looking like a Super Bowl team," and I just thought to myself, "Oh my gosh, it is way too damn early to be calling this a Super Bowl team." But anyway, we obviously are getting a little more familiar with what these offenses are doing, what these defenses are doing. Same thing applies for college football. We've got a Rocky Mountain showdown.
Hang on real quick.
Yeah.
Before we get to CU and CSU, final thing on the Dolphins, who are clearly in the quarterback market. Mike McDaniel said as much this morning in his Zoom press conference with reporters in Miami. What's that?
Tom Brady.
Yep.
Tom Brady.
Oh, Tom Brady. Tom Brady finally comes in Miami.
Tom Brady.
He lives
close. He lives close to Miami. His kids live in Florida. I'm just saying, Tom Brady.
Really?
He's also complained about the fact that he feels like quarterbacks have kind of gone downhill a little bit. The game is changing. He doesn't like it. Tom Brady, this is your chance. Time to come on back.
And he wasn't great in the booth week 1. You're not expecting him to be an Emmy winner right out of the gate. So maybe he's like, you know what? Let me Let me go do what I'm really great at and throw it to this track team out here. In a world where Tom Brady doesn't decide to come out of retirement, I know that the Broncos have 2 quarterbacks on their roster that feel like they'd be an upgrade from Skylar Thompson. I get that they saw plenty of bad Zach Wilson, but you give Zach Wilson those weapons and Mike McDaniel after the quarterback rehab that he started to go through since the Broncos traded for him draft weekend, that makes some sense. Even Jarrett Stidham, it would take $5 million off the Broncos books. So I know there's people over there that wouldn't be that sad if the Dolphins offered. You probably have to offer a higher draft pick, I think, for Zach Wilson at this point, I think.
Oh, yeah.
But if they offered kind of anything, 5th or higher, conditional based on how many starts he gets, if I'm George Payton, I'm certainly waiting for Chris Greer from the Dolphins to call.
I'm not getting rid of Zach Wilson, man. That guy,
I agree with that.
I say you keep him on your team because Bo Nix, who knows what's going to happen with Bo.
Yeah.
Right.
And he might get hurt. He might suck. And Zach Wilson showed me enough this training camp, this preseason to say, I want that guy on my team.
But what if it's a high draft pick? What if it's a 3rd that's conditional up to a 2nd if he plays 6 starts or whatever, something like that?
Yeah, I consider it. I don't see them doing that though, but the Dolphins.
Yeah,
Nate would consider it. He's gonna sleep on that
I'll
one.
think about it.
It's a great point,
number 1
BK.
for Bradley Chubb.
BK, it's a really great point. The Dolphins are in a position now where they kind of have to figure out what's next. When you've got a Tyreek Hill, a Jalen Waddle, you gotta. Unfortunately, you don't want to watch their season just completely fall apart. And in order for them to have a decent chance at anything, I think they've got to get a better quarterback on their side if Tua decides to take some time to really get healthy. So, but also there's the chance that Tua comes back like he did last season following the 2 concussions he got in the prior season, and he comes back and he's still ready to play and he's been cleared and he wants to do it. So, but you bring up a good point. We didn't spend enough time talking about, the Dolphins and what their plan is to do for this quarterback situation. I guess time will tell there, but let's talk
the crazy
a little
thing
bit.
is, can I comment on what you just said?
Of course.
The crazy thing is this conversation is exactly what's going to pull Tua back on the field as fast as he possibly can. Like listening to the national conversation about who's going to replace him, who are they going to get instead of Tua. He's like, me, motherfucker, I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to watch this pass me by. I just signed a new contract. I'm making $60 million a year. Is that what he makes, BK? 60 million? 60?
Something like, it's 220 divided by 4. I'm not great at math, but that's about right. Or 55. 55.
Which is
way.
about, which is, I got it. I just wanted that info. I'm going to keep talking for a second, BK.
Well, no, but injury guarantee.
I just want to finish the point. It's about 25% of the salary cap with one guy, 20 to, and so of course the pressure's on him to come back and be out there and prove all the doubters wrong and come back in this heroic return to the field to lead his team to glory. That's really what football is all about, like being tough, getting back in the huddle. And this conversation about who's going to replace Tua, you don't think he's sitting at home right now watching this shit? Like turning on the TV, even though they tell you not to watch TV when you got a concussion because the lights are too bright. But when I got one, I just watched it with sunglasses on.
Of course you did. Of course you did.
I did.
Oh my gosh.
But I'm just saying the pressure's on. The pressure is on him to get out there. But this is a conversation that actually is absolutely necessary for the Dolphins to have.
For sure. Yeah.
Well, but the tricky part too is the money. That was all I was going to get to, was not the money he's making now. If he walks away on his own, it's hard to not, I can't say it's hard. At some point you get cleared from a concussion. I don't know when, but you don't have a lifelong concussion. I'm not saying that he doesn't have negative effects, but at some point he will pass the test, you would think, unless his brain is so scrambled, and the fact that he walked off on his own and all of that, it's probably safe to assume that at some point, even if it's a month down the road, 2 months, we saw with Eric Johnson here on the Avalanche, took him 8 or 10 months to get back on the ice, but eventually he did. And so at that point, he then has to decide, his people, if they're going to talk to the Dolphins, they have to negotiate an injury sort of walk away, because he's gonna walk on the field and say, hey, I'm ready to go. Otherwise, he just loses $167 million. I understand he got $40 million signing bonus this year and all that, plus his first round money. So he's probably not hurting for cash, but that's still a lot of money just to walk away from. If the doctors say, hey, you don't have a concussion anymore, I don't know about your long-term health, because nobody does as it relates to brains. It's just going to be, it's not the easiest conversation to say, hey, the Dolphins can send him away, because if he's cleared, Dolphins lawyers are going to say, we don't want to just write a $167 million check that will count against our cap to some degree and all of that. I don't know all the ramifications of all that, but it's not just as easy as, oh, he's walking away, he doesn't feel like playing anymore, and by the way, here's your 167 guaranteed against injury. They have $49 million in insurance, I saw. Maybe that's the settlement that they come up with, like, hey, here's $50 million to walk away. and then we'll see it at alumni events.
All good things. Are we good on this? Anything else, fellas?
I was gonna say, if Guerilla Sports gave me $50 million to walk away, I wouldn't do it. I want to be on the field. I want to be here.
Let
with
me
you
play.
guys.
Put me in, coach.
That's right.
That's
Yeah,
fair.
job to do.
Okay, so speaking of playing, there's a lot of games happening. One of which is a college football game, CSU versus CU, Rocky Mountain Showdown. Right now, the Buffaloes are actually favored by -7.5. On the money line, you can bet them at not a great value, -250. But if you think for some reason Colorado State will in fact murder this CU team as they stated, you could take them on the money line at +202, or you could just bet the total, which is over under 58.5. Fellas, BK, I'll start with you. You've been you're big into all things Denver. I'm sure you've heard some whispers and seen some conversations and whatnot. Where are you leaning in this one? What do you foresee happening? Will CSU in fact murder CU, or was that a very heavy statement to make?
Yeah, look, Torrey Horton's a really good player, and he's going to be a high draft pick, first, second round draft pick is the projection. But to come out and say that, you're throwing fuel on the fire that didn't need any more fuel, right? It's a pretty big fire. And that was, I went up to CU's press conferences on Tuesday and asked Coach Prime the same question I asked the two players they brought in EJ McKinney and BJ Green, who are new to the program, like so many of those players, about the difference between this rivalry and the Nebraska rivalry, right? The Nebraska rivalry is a lifelong kind of college football rivalry, just like Nebraska and OU or Texas and OU, right? We could go down that list. But just, and as big a deal to say Texas and OU is, when I lived in Oklahoma City, I saw how important the OU Oklahoma State rivalry was to the little brother, if you will. And that's, I think, what even Jay Norvell said this week, that we're the little stepbrother to CU. It matters to Oklahoma State because those are your neighbors. And it should matter to OU more because that's who you live next to. There's not Nebraskans all over the place, but if we walk outside of our houses right now, you're going to have CU and CSU alums all over the place, and fans and people whose family went there and all of that. And so this really is their Super Bowl. And now it's being bet the other way. It was at 7 most of the week. It's up to 7.5. If that number keeps climbing, you know that CSU is going to throw everything in the kitchen sink. I just don't know why Torrey Horton felt the need to go out there and say that. I don't think that, I don't know how much external motivation. Yeah, I don't know how much they need external motivation, although it does seem to fuel some of those guys to some degree. We saw last year where the whole thing with taking my hat off when I'm inside, or respect and all that, and then Shedeur and Dion taking exception with that comment. And so now you have you made it personal, as Dion said last year? Maybe, by saying you're going to murder those guys, but then you have to do it on the field. And I think this is
you got to put your money where your mouth is.
I'm not ready to say CSU wins.
Shit talking goes both ways. It applies to both teams. So obviously there's the team who got shit talked, and that's CU. So how do they respond to that? Look, if the only thing that gets CU going is making fun of their Instagram followers, to me, that means CU's weak. They're a weak football team. They're weak-minded. When the only way you can get them is to make fun of their online presence, they should have been up for the game against Nebraska. They should be up for every game. And so in my mind, they come out here and methodically handle CSU, but aren't emotional and, like wildly swinging back and forth and like, oh no, what's up now? No, they just beat the shit out of them and shut up and walk off the field. But for CSU, they know they're the underdog, right? So the shit talking helps them because it cashes, or it writes a check that now they have to go fucking cash. The same thing happened last year with Jay Norvell. In advance of the game, he talked shit and made his players realize this was a huge game. We got to go out and back up our coach. And they almost beat CU. They should have beat CU, right? They were ready for that game. So I have to assume this is along the same lines as that, where I got some leaders saying some things they maybe shouldn't have, but at the same time, they said it, and now we all got to come with them and prove it up there. So I think this is going to help CSU more than it helps CU. I think when CU plays emotionally, they make a ton of mistakes.
Yep.
Their heads are not in the game, and they shoot themselves in the foot. I think that's what CSU is counting on. I think if you're talking about sound football, Jay Norvell is a better head coach than Dion to get guys to just be in the right place and do the right thing and be smart football players. I think Dion has a long way to go with that. And so you can see that sometimes his players kind of just, they're not disciplined. They're not disciplined. They make a lot of mistakes and they do some stupid shit. And if this is going to goat them into doing more stupid shit, then CSU wins and it gives them an advantage. And so I'm interested to see how it shapes out.
Anytime the underdogs start running their mouth, it's one of those things where if it does work in their favor, they're going to become the coolest guys on the block, right? I can already picture the hype videos they make where it's 1 second them saying we're going to murder these guys, and then it's the next, of them mocking Shadur's Rolex moments or whatever. It's the same way that last season I kept saying that Rolex flexing is cool and all until it's not. And then you're a laughable meme. And then everyone's saying, well, that didn't really age super well because like you said, Nate, when you're expected to win, those flashy moments aren't as cool. But when you're the underdog talking trash, saying you're going to murder this team and that you don't care about following on Instagram, as most of these football players shouldn't, it definitely is going to look super sick and cool. They'll be the coolest kids on the block if it does actually work in their favor. So Nate, from what I'm gathering, it sounds like maybe you'd be willing to take CSU plus 7.5 here. Are you feeling comfortable with that?
I'm not. I think CU is going to find a way to win by a little more than that. I think it'll be a close game throughout. But I'm counting, I'm counting on the talent, I guess, working out for CU because they're a more talented team. But at the same time, like Mike Tyson used to say, like, if you fight emotionally, you're not going to fight well. You have to fight methodically, technically, and disassociate yourself from the emotion. Now, passion is important, but getting affected by something someone said in an interview and making that something you're actually thinking about on the football field, to me, is a distraction from what you're trying to accomplish. I'm trying to go out there, like Mike Shanahan used to say, our opponents are nameless, faceless opponents. We don't give a fuck who they are as people. We're just trying to go stomp on their necks and get the fuck out of there. He didn't say the fuck and the stomp on the necks. He talked about
that's a Nate special.
Yeah,
that was a remix version.
He talked about the nameless, faceless opponents though. So I'm not.
That last bit though was a Nate.
That was the kicker, right? I mean, that's
wow. Okay. The Broncos need you in the halftime locker room speech. That's all I'm saying.
I'm ready. Call me, Coach Payton.
BK, what side are you on in this one?
Yeah, I think CU sneaks it out. But I'm not sure they cover. I guess we'll find out, obviously. So I think I'd be inclined, if I were going to bet it, to bet CSU. But I think that CU comes away with a win, maybe something in that 31, 24 kind of range, which I guess is maybe a cover. But we'll see. Also, I just looked up on SeatGeek, and I'm sure you go to pick your favorite aftermarket ticket app. But what was once a $250 ticket across the board, you can get in there now for $150 in the corners up top. And up top is not the same as up top at, say, in Power Field at Mile High. It's just not a very big stadium there at Camden Stadium. It holds upwards of 40 when they expand it all the way out, with standing room only and stuff in the two concourses. But it's more like 35 to 40, but closer to 35. Either way, there's a bunch all over the place under $200, including in the lower levels or standing room for $160. So if you're thinking about heading up there, you can go online and what was, like I said, once $250, now almost $100 less than that. But also, I did think, and hats off to CSU's athletic department, they made, if you wanted to buy a ticket, you can't buy single game tickets. If you want to buy a ticket to this game, at least, you had to buy a season ticket package. Maybe you can buy a single game to Northern Colorado or to other games, but if you wanted to buy a ticket to the CU game through the athletic department, through their ticketing site, you had to buy all 4, 5, 6 home games, whatever it is. So
that's a
good on them.
marketing strategy.
My Jayhawks used to do that with Nebraska. And if you wanted to buy KU Nebraska tickets, you had to buy the whole season because they knew so many folks that couldn't always get into Memorial Stadium there in Lincoln would head down to Lawrence, and that would help the KU athletic department a little bit.
Love it. Okay, well, sounds like you guys are leaning CU in this one. You think they're going to come out on top. I don't have a side in this one, so I'm not going to give one. But I obviously am always rooting for the underdog. If I don't have a stake in the game, I love an underdog outright win. So we'll root for that. But of course, can't go wrong either way. These are two teams that represent Colorado pretty well. And this is a traditional game that people get excited about. So either way, I'm not going to be upset, but would love to see an underdog win. Speaking of underdogs, let's actually talk about our team that is an underdog this week. Okay, we've got the Broncos. I believe right now they are 2.5 point underdogs, but let me double check because I don't want to be giving false information out here.
That's what I saw. That's what I saw earlier this morning.
Yeah, I think they're 2.5-point underdogs right now. And if you wanted to bet them to win outright, you could bet them at plus 130 odds. The total is dangerously low in this one, 36.5. We know that the Pittsburgh Steelers have a very dominant defense. We also know that if it weren't for 2 safeties and some field goals, the Broncos barely made it up on the board. We also know there's some quarterback stuff happening with the Steelers. They ended up starting Justin Fields in week 1. He didn't look horrible, but he's also been notoriously unreliable. So it seems that Vegas predicts this will be a low-scoring affair. I think most people will probably share that sentiment. But fellas, let's remove our bias if we can. I know. It's hard. If we can remove our bias, how do we really think based on week 1 and or the adjustments that we believe the Broncos have made in this week? What do we predict will happen with our very own Denver Broncos against TJ Watt and company? Ouch.
All right, I'll start. I think that the Broncos defense is going to do pretty well against the Pittsburgh Steelers offense and Justin Fields, who has been a notorious turnover machine. I mean, this guy does not hold on to the football. He throws picks, he fumbles, he plays recklessly with the ball. He's very dynamic, and he can make some big plays on you, but he's also can make the big mistake. And I think the Broncos defense is ready for that, ready to pounce on that. You know, they've been opportunistic, last season and this first season, or in the first game last week as well. So I think the Broncos defense is going to fare pretty well. The question to me is going to be the Broncos offense, right? And whether or not some guys are going to step up around Bo Nix and help Bo Nix out and make a special play. The design of the plays is not enough to make it work. The concepts are not enough. Sean Payton on the sideline drawing it up, that's not enough. Guys have to go out there and make a special play, make a guy miss, make 2-3 guys miss, score a 50-yard touchdown. Guess what that does to the rest of your sideline? Emboldens them to do the same stuff. The guys have been standing around waiting for another guy to make a play and thinking that as long as I listen to Sean Payton and do exactly what he tells me, then the points are going to come. They're not. That's the platform. The coaches build you the platform, but you got to stand on that platform and dance. You got to go do the performance. Okay. You got to do something special. You're the artist out there, right? So these guys have to remember
platform.
Yeah, Cortland Sutton, 12 targets last week, 34 yards. Cortland Sutton's got to step up, right?
Big time.
Tim Patrick, it would be nice maybe to have Tim Patrick right now because he has a feel for the offense and a feel for space that these guys didn't seem to have last week. But I think they're going to look a little bit better on offense. I'm going to go with the under. I think that the Broncos could find a way to win. Are we predicting the win and the loss?
If you want, yeah, go ahead and give your prediction. It doesn't have to be a score prediction because I hate those because they just are so hard to get right. But yeah, you can just predict what you think, who you think is going to win.
Yeah, I think the Broncos are going to win by 3. What?
You also thought the Broncos were going to win in week 1.
Well,
this is at home. The Broncos
sometimes
home.
You're right, sometimes you're wrong.
Yeah, and the Broncos home opener record is like over the last 25 years is 21-4. They have a home field advantage here with the altitude, the crowd. They're, like I said, the offense and
That's
the defense
fair.
and the special teams is playing very well. I don't think Pittsburgh is necessarily a great team. They're going to have a good defense, but they don't put up points. And so if the Broncos can take advantage of some red zone situations, turnovers, things like that, field position, I think the offense is going to look better this week. Put it that way. I think the Broncos offense is going to look better. And I think they are going to find a way to win 16-12 or some shit.
Oh, what a fun football game. Jiminy
Christmas.
Hey,
I was asked on Fox 31 this morning to give a score prediction because that's what they asked me every Friday. And last week we saw this Steelers team, which we know has a really good defense, go into Atlanta and score 0 touchdowns. Not that the Broncos had a bunch, but they had one at least. That's one more than the Steelers and Justin Fields had. And they won 18-15. So I'm going to flip that score. And before I give analysis, I'm just going to piggyback off Nate. I do think it's about a field goal game. And so I'm going to say it's 18-15. I don't know how you get there. Maybe it's not 6 field goals. Maybe it's going for 2 here and there. Maybe it's another safety. We know the Broncos are averaging 2 safeties a game, on pace for 34 safeties at this point, which would be a record for a single season. But there is some data, though. As much as we wanted to see Russ in that story, and you know what Russ is, you know what Russ isn't. You also know that in a close game, Russ just finds
Russ
ways
is
to
a
win
chicken.
them.
Sorry.
Ooh.
Well, I don't think Russ is choosing to sit out this game. The
Oh,
one thing I
well,
can guarantee you is that
you know what? It makes a better storyline to say he's a chicken. So
yeah, but this is a
I'm
guy
gonna
that
say it.
insists on playing and was pissed when he had to sit an extra week with the concussion, and then made a point of still doing a press conference at his locker 2 years ago. And then when he was on his way to getting benched last year, had no problem throwing the team under. Russ wants to play. That's the one thing he wants to do more than anything. I'm not saying he doesn't have a lot of other stuff going on, but he wants to play football.
You think
That's
he wants to
everybody's
play in
favorite.
Denver?
100%. Why not? What would he be scared of? It's not like he thought, oh, this team was great and I wish I was here leading them. Or, man, I can't believe I walked away from that Super Bowl contender that they moved
He's
on
got
from.
He's got Joel Embiid syndrome, is what it's seeming like.
So,
he played against the Super Bowl and won. So I don't think that's that. I mean, you can create this narrative, but I think it's just 100% wrong.
Liv,
He's like,
nonetheless,
Liv, do you think
that Justin Fields?
Liv.
Yeah.
Do you think that
Justin Fields looked like the best version of Russell Wilson in the second and start of the third quarter last year in Chicago, where they scored 28 unanswered. But then Justin Fields looked like the Justin Fields we know, with the turnovers. Jonathan Cooper gets a sack. Nick Bonito with the strip sack that Coop, his college teammate, grabs and takes to the house 35 yards. And the Broncos don't look back and end up going into Chicago and stealing that win 31-28. And so I don't say don't look back. It was obviously a close game late, but that was their first win in the Sean Payton era. And it was thanks in large part to Justin Fields taking his cape off and turning back into Justin Fields. So you know what he is and you know what he isn't. You know the run package is going to be more even complex than it might have been in Chicago with what Arthur Smith might dial up. But you can, I think, try to mitigate that. This defense is better against the run this year than they were a year ago, we think, although third quarter last week may have proven otherwise, at least for the time being. Nonetheless, I think the Broncos D is better than Atlanta's D. And Atlanta's offense right now with Kirk Cousins doesn't look great. Right. He's not the Kirk Cousins we saw before the injury. So I don't think it'll be a pretty game, but I won't be surprised at all. And I'm picking the Broncos to win.
Damn. You guys both think the Broncos are winning this weekend.
Yeah.
Now I feel like a hater.
Oh, you tell us what you think's going to happen, Liv.
If you think Steelers are winning, fine. Just bet it so that you're at least right there.
Do I think it's possible that the Broncos could get a win here? Yes, but I also think I've just trained my brain to not get my hopes up. So my biggest concern is just the Steelers defense and what a guy like TJ Watt can do to Bo Nix's game. I also would love to think that there's a coaching advantage for the Broncos, but I am also a very big fan of Mike Tomlin. I think he's an excellent coach in the NFL. So to me, they're kind of evenly matched here. It's like two unreliable offenses with two pretty great defenses and two great coaches. So I don't really feel confident saying the Broncos are going to win because I think that it really could go either way in this one. But I also think it's easier on my heart to just assume that we're not going to win. And then if we do, I'm pleasantly surprised and I'm happy.
That
was not an answer, Liv. What are you choosing? Give me a score.
That was like when you're trying to reach a word count in an essay and you go all the way around the answer before you give it.
Henceforth, to summarize my position on the present discussion, I believe.
Correct. I'm going to go Steelers.
Okay.
I know. I'm a hater. I am genuine. I'm wearing a Broncos shirt.
Yeah, I was going to say, just cover that up. Can you put on a different shirt, please? Because
I'm going to go ahead and say that the Steelers are going to win in a very, very, very close game. And honestly, it'll probably have much to do with Justin Fields on the ground and not through the air. I could see him like late in the game running one in himself. I don't know. But I do think I'm backing the Steelers in this one.
Here's the key, though, for me. Broncos have to put up points in the first half. They just have to. They never.
I don't know if they will.
They haven't forever. I mean, when's the last time we just saw an opening drive touchdown followed by another drive touch? That's what they have to do, especially
preseason against the Colts.
Right. Especially when the defense comes out so game and the special teams come out and gives you opportunities in good field position. Take advantage of it. Go up early. Force Justin Fields into some bad decisions, and then you can play a more conservative brand of football and not feel like you got to play catch up at the end there. But I think the key for the Broncos is going to be scoring a couple of touchdowns in the first half.
BK, thoughts on special teams?
Yeah, because you brought it up and because the coordinators talk, and it's funny to see from Joe Lombardi, who always goes first, then Vance Joseph, and people have questions for VJ. I give Joe Lombardi credit because Ed Donatel was here for those years with Vic and would say nothing. We'd ask him a question because they put the defense coordinator up there and he'd say, I don't know, ask Vic. We're like, well, you're on the box, so we're going to ask you. Joe Lombardi at least kind of say stuff, but we know that Sean's still the one running the offense. VJ runs the defense, but then Ben Katwika comes up, and because of the the kickoff rule, it's obviously created a little bit bigger audience, but a lot of times it's like me and Andrew Mason and 2 or 3 other people that just kind of have nerdy football special teams questions. But one of the things I asked him about was we saw Marvin Mims as a gunner the other day, and that was something that we didn't see last. I was pretty sure we hadn't, and then I asked Ben and I asked Marvin at his locker both about that, and it's kind of the more you can do, but especially in those pooch punt situations, you saw the great play Trayvon Smith made to keep the ball in bounds and get it down to the one that led to one of those safeties. And so I don't know if they want Marvin Mims as a gunner all the time, because I think there's a world where you'd like to see your fastest offensive player, I guess maybe he and Jaleel in a race might tie, but your fastest wideout get on the field and maybe stretch it a little. But they're not using him like that. He had 12 offensive snaps. So if he can get on the field and affect the special teams, I'm sure hard to block because of how fast he is. He told me he did it a little bit his final year at OU, a couple times situationally like that. The Broncos do seem to have a bit of an advantage. If Riley Dixon's going to punt the ball as well as he did last week, he was a little inconsistent last year, and we know Will Lutz is going to make a lot more kicks than he'll miss. And so far, we'll see how they handle the kickoff thing. I'm worried that this team's going to outthink themselves and try to game the system, because that's just the way Sean Payton and I think Mike Westhoff approach football. But if they can just kind of play it straight up, you get the muff punt. It's not that you did anything great, but you're still able to recover it. That the Broncos do have a special teams advantage most weeks. And I think we saw that last week. It ended up not ultimately paying off, because I do think at some point we'll see the Pro Bowl return skills that Marvin Mims displayed last year, and he'll break one. And because of the way the kickoff's designed, especially at a mile high, if they don't just kick it out of the end zone, maybe you try to get cute thinking it can hang up in the air longer. You hit a couple blocks and it's going to be a house call. We saw one last week. I think somebody had a 96-yarder, but I think that Marvin Mims could be one of those on that list here at some point. So I don't want to just discount special teams, but we know it's going to be, you can't have a lot of margin for error against the Steelers team, because they'll make you pay with just how good their defense is.
It doesn't really matter how long the hang time is on a kickoff. You can't move until they catch the ball.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. So being cute on
kickoffs
I guess where you land it. I'm
just saying, it doesn't matter how the hang time is, okay? Because they can't move until they catch it. And that's another one of these quirky elements to this new rule. It's like, what is going on, right? So it's taken some people a while to adjust to this, including the returners, who have to figure out where the holes are, where the momentum is, where the energy is on these kickoffs, who have spent their whole life kicking or returning different types of kicks. When it comes to Marvin Mims, it just goes to show that the fastest guys aren't always the best receivers. It's like, just because you're the fastest, it doesn't mean you're going to be able to get open or understand where the zones are or understand how to be patient with your routes. Sometimes the fast guys think that's all I have to do is just be fast out there. No, you have landmarks to hit. You have coverages to read while you're in motion. You have to listen for checks and do so many things as a receiver in your brain that supersedes just your physical ability to just run down the field. And so maybe Marvin Mims is having a hard time picking up the nuance of this system and being in the right spot for Bo Nix and for Sean Payton, because you have to do it every day at practice for the coach to believe that you're going to do it in the game. And so you have to do it to his liking Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. If you do that, then they'll put you on the field on Sunday. But if you are unsure of yourself on Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, or making little mistakes, then you're not going to get on that field. And so I think that might be what's happening to Marvin Mims.
You guys ever seen Blindside? The Blindside?
Yeah, I read the book.
Where she goes, enough with the trick plays, Bert. Run the dang ball. That's how I feel. That's how I feel. Javonte Williams, anytime touchdown last week, absolutely should have cashed. That was absurd that it didn't. So I'm going to need Sean Payton a little more run plays, but we do have a comment here. The Commanders, Patriots, and Vikings are using virtual reality to help train their rookie quarterbacks. Do you, BK or Nate, have any idea if the Broncos are taking advantage of virtual reality to train Bo Nix?
I don't know about Bo specifically. I can find out. I know they had it in the building with Drew Lock and Brett Rippon, because they would talk about it a lot in their press conferences in terms of, Rip didn't, we'd have to go ask him about it, but
it didn't help Drew very
well to get ready.
Yeah, it's not working.
It didn't necessarily help Drew either, but just as a tool, I don't know if Bo's using that or if he has used it, but I think that the more technology that you can use, if it helps you do your job better, right? Obviously, just look at what iPads have given, or Microsoft Surface, depending on which one you're using. But I'm in the locker room. There's a handful of guys who are always on, including Pat Surtain. Like, you walk in, he's out of his locker every time the media's in there, but he's got the iPad out most of the time, and he's just watching game film. And so if they have, they have access to it. And that's the one thing about Sean Payton. We've talked about this. he embraces technology. For all the old school, April's for running and lifting, Bill Parcells stuff, he was the first to use next-gen stats of any coach in the league in Zebra Technologies. First to have cryo in the building. First to have a flow tank. Then he wants to marry the science and the data with the old school football kind of approach. And I think he does do that. So I wouldn't be surprised if they are using it at least at some point or have used it.
BK, you wouldn't be surprised because you're convinced robots are going to kill us in 10 years.
Maybe not us, but our descendants, our kids. Yeah, I'm worried. I don't sleep on it, but I would be worried.
See, I'm not worried about that. And so along the same line, I don't like virtual reality goggles to help a quarterback try to figure out how to play the game of football. It's like someone who watches
throw the damn ball.
Well, I mean, no, you learn by being out there with actual bodies in the third dimension. It's like someone who watches a lot of porn thinking they know how to make love. That's not going to happen, right? So it's just too much time spent online, okay? And more video games.
Shot at Shannon Sharp.
Did you just connect Bo Nix using virtual reality to porn watchers and making love to their partners?
Absolutely. People who are obsessed with pornography have a hard time being intimate in real life, right? And so the same holds true with people who are too conceptual about football. If they get out on the field and they think, oh, it's supposed to be like this. That's how it was with my goggles on. Boom. Your ass gets rocked. You lose the ball. Your team loses, right? That's why so many, a lot of these people who sit up on TV and tell you what's supposed to happen in a football game don't understand kind of, where the rubber hits the road, if you know what I mean. And so there's a disconnect there. And I don't want my quarterback thinking along those video game conceptual lines. I want him out there feeling the moment in the third dimension.
But here's where I'm going to disagree, right? It's the notion, and there's plenty of drivers that'll tell you the race simulators really do help. And so it's one thing that's all a quarterback were to do is just VR. But when you're sitting there looking at the iPad and you're seeing that, but then if you can, and I just don't know where the technology is, but did you guys see that sports bar in Dallas that they're going to?
Oh my gosh, that's the coolest looking thing in the world.
They're going to replicate in 40 other locations, but
that was insane.
It looked like you were sitting in the end zone there at the Big House against Michigan lost to Texas last week. And so if you can mimic that technology and put the player in the middle of the field where they can see the way a player moves as they're sliding into position, either to blitz or to bluff on a blitz or whatever, and you can use that and just have an idea of player movement. I don't think that's the only thing you should use, but I don't think it can hurt. And that's why I think Drew Lock and Brett Rippon mentioned that. I think that's why when Aaron's talking about the Commanders, Pats, and Vikings, I think the more you can simulate it, the more it can only help. Now, if you think, oh, well, in the game, that's what happened, but they're not playing it as a game. Like, they're not playing Madden virtually. They're literally just showing you the film from that perspective. So you're like, oh, this is what it looks like when TJ Watt comes down from outside or jumps behind, whatever.
I bet TJ Watt.
Why not just watch it on film? Why not just watch it on film?
I was going to say, I bet TJ Watt hopes that Bo Nix is preparing with goggles on his eyes because TJ Watt is going to absolutely revel in that moment.
Have you ever done virtual reality? Have you ever put on those goggles?
They give me a headache. Actually,
exactly. They made me want to.
They don't give everyone a headache.
Yeah, they might give my quarterback a headache. I don't want him fucking recalibrating his brain and his equilibrium with his bullshit. If you want to see how they blitz, put it up on the film, and then we'll go walk through it out on the field. I'm not going to put my quarterback in fucking virtual reality goggles out there. All right.
Well, I'm going to get to talk to Sean Payton here when he meets the media right around 1:45. Yeah. And I'm going to ask about it because Friday you can sometimes go off the board. Last Friday, I asked him about teaching a young team and has it reinvigorated him. So I will get that in there today and ask where he comes down on virtual reality. Has he seen it? Has he used it? A guy that you're familiar with, Ted Sundquist, is involved in one of the companies that's on the forefront of this. So I'm glad that you're hoping that Ted's business goes belly up. Well, nicely done, Nate. You're a good pal.
Thanks, man. Yeah.
There were so many things about that conversation. I was fighting tears. Yeah, I don't know. I guess I'm just picturing, again, I do think there's benefits to both. I think that obviously you cannot rely on virtual reality goggles to prepare you for a TJ Watt on a Sunday. Okay. There's just no way. But in conjunction with, the physical practice of it all, I have to sneeze. Sorry. Wow. Okay. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I think there's a lot going on. But anyway, I think that was a great question, Aaron. Thank you so much for asking that, because I do think that's a pretty big conversation. We're watching. I know just last night with the Thursday Night Football broadcast, they're finding new ways to use AI to make the games more visual
That
on
stuff's really
TV.
cool.
It
That
is
stuff
really
they do
cool,
on
but
Amazon's really cool.
it's starting to kind of take. I mean, technology really is taking over. I know we joke about BK and his little robot claim, but you know what? He might
I'm
not
not
be
the only
far
one that
off.
said it.
Yeah.
I'm
I'm not
tired of
making
using technology.
I'm not making this up. But look, things evolve, right? We used to smoke on
course.
airplanes and not wear seatbelts or not wear helmets when you ride a bike. Like we're allowed to evolve and embrace change.
Yeah,
I
but
still
you're
think
also
that's
allowed to
stupid.
say that this new thing that they came up with sucks and I don't want to use it, or allow
Okay.
that to, like, just because you came up with a new next thing doesn't mean you have to make it a part of your life, Brandon. I mean,
Yeah,
there's
but just to rule it out without using it is different than
Oh, no,
trying it and saying, oh,
I've
you know,
used
that
VR
sucks.
goggles before, and I've seen video games, and I played football, and I've been in all the meeting rooms. I've done all this shit, so I'm formulating an opinion based on experience, which in your case it's more conceptual, and that's no fault of your own. But I'm just offering a
My
different
parents' fault.
window.
My parents' fault. He's blaming his parents. Okay, so we basically have said the fellas to my sides here, right there. They are backing the Broncos this weekend. Nate likes the under. BK thinks there's a special advantage or a special teams advantage in this one. I am unfortunately leaning with the Steelers in this one. I just don't trust our offense enough yet. And I think both of these teams kind of evenly matched in the sense that unreliable offenses, great defense, great coaches. So I'm leaning Steelers in this one, but that's also just, protecting myself. And that way, if the Broncos do upset and I'm wrong, I'm okay to be wrong and I will be excited in the moment. Really quick
Real
before
quick.
what?
Real quick about the game though, because the Broncos are about to go on the road to Tampa, hang out in West Virginia for a few days, then to the Jets, and we know that the Bucs might be better than they even were last year, perhaps at least based on 1 week. And I know they're playing the Commanders. We'll see what happens in Detroit, but it won't be easy. That's for sure. It almost never is. It's always hotter. Sometimes there's lightning delays when you go to Tampa, but they've got 2 tough road games coming up. If they lose to the Steelers, which could absolutely happen, and your prediction could be right, they could be staring 0-4 in the face real quick with who knows what the Raiders team will be coming in October 6th in week 5. But I think that a win here is pretty vitally important to them having any kind of chance at postseason success. I know things have changed in a 17-week season and a 7-game playoff participant world. So the data isn't what it once was, starting 0-2 or even starting 0-3. We need probably another 5-7 years of it before we really know, because then we'll be at about a decade. But I do think that starting 0-2, knowing you've got 2 more road games, is not where you want to be.
Okay. Love it. Really quick before we get out of here, a couple of things. Just in the most quickness. I know we can talk forever and ever about what we like, but I want all of us to give an underdog on the week 1 slate that is not the Broncos. You've already said you think the Broncos are winning. Now I need a new one, fellas. Pull up
Underdog
the slate.
week 1. I'm taking the Patriots to beat the Bengals week 1. Mark it down.
Talking about week 2, Liv?
I meant week 2, you freaking jerk.
Yeah,
I nailed it. Also, the Bengals are 1-8 in Joe Burrow's career in weeks 1 and 2. So I'd go.
So fade the Bengals, he's saying. But underdogs outright, I will start. It's a virtual pick 'em, so it's not like you're going to get a ton of value on this play. But I like the Rams. I like the Rams against the Cardinals, I believe. This is obviously a division game, and I know that the Cardinals looked pretty great in week 1. But as we know, typically in typical betting fashion, we like to overreact based on what we see in week 1. And while I was very impressed, is it the Cardinals? Am I losing my? Yes, it is.
Yep.
While I was very impressed by the Cardinals in week 1, especially now seeing what the Bills were able to do to Miami and how well the Cardinals were able to compete with the Bills. We always know that there's different things happening. Nate, you mentioned it at the top of the show. You can't always take week 1 so seriously. So I don't want to overreact too much with this Cardinals team. So I like Stafford and company, the Rams, to upset the Cardinals. It's a virtual pick 'em. If you want to bet that money line, it's plus 102, nothing crazy. So that's my underdog. Nate, I'll start with you. What is your underdog for the week besides the Broncos?
I'm going to go out on a limb here and say Chicago is going to go into Houston and get a win.
Oh, I don't hate that at all.
Yeah, thanks.
I like that. That's a good one.
Thanks,
Caleb
man.
Williams had another week under his belt to kind of gel with his offense there. I love the Texans, but Okay, that's a good one. BK, what's your underdog besides the Broncos, of course?
Well, I probably would have gone Rams. I picked them to win in one of the pick'em leagues I'm in, and so I think that the Rams are going to go into Arizona. And when I think Arizona was a little smoke and mirrors last week, I don't think it's a good team. I don't think it's a good roster. I don't like Kyler Murray saying it's not my job to feed Marvin Harrison. It's like, well, he's your best weapon, so I think that kind of is your job as the quarterback. I get you don't want to force it or force feed him. So I think that is the way I would have gone. I don't necessarily like the Bears, but I do like the Browns, even with all the other stuff going on. I think that the Browns have a chance to go to Jacksonville, and it wasn't like Jacksonville looked like world beaters as they were up on the Dolphins a bunch in that game or for most of that game in Miami last week. But I think that the Browns could go on the road and win that game. I also won't be surprised if Tennessee finds a way to beat the Jets at home and if the Vikings cover. I'm not ready to say the Vikings will beat the Niners, but I think they'll cover that 5.5 at home. They have a good chance to do that, although they do know what Sam Darnold's about too there in San Fran after being with them last year.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. One final thing, Aaron Palmer back in the chat with another super chat for us in regards to the virtual reality stuff. He says, Jaden Daniels raves about how much VR has helped him. They can do 250 more reps a week. They can run plays at 70% faster speed. Great athletic article about LSU developing it with a German company. So again, I think it just depends on who's using it, and it's probably personal preference. Those kind of things, those goggles, they make me nauseous. I don't know how I would get anything productive done. I don't like the feeling at all. So I probably wouldn't love it, but a BK, it sounds like BK would.
Can I throw one more thing out before we get out of here? Final thing,
course.
real quick. Big announcement, okay, for one of us. Nate grew up in the Bay Area. He grew up a Niners fan. All his friends are Niners fans. So I just want to quickly congratulate Nate's got a new podcast with George Kittle. He's going to fly out to the Bay Area every week. And then I separately have one with Christian McCaffrey. I know his dad and mom really well.
They're going to be
Christian
fantastic.
So Nate's going to fly to the Bay Area every week to do a George Kittle podcast. Separately, I'm going to fly to do one with Christian McCaffrey. Liv, do you have any announcements that are as cool as ours?
Yeah, similar energy from both of you. I'll be flying to San Francisco and filming with Deebo Samuel for a little podcast situation. Will be super cool, obviously, to get to know him as a human and not just an athlete. And every week we'll be talking to different wide receivers across the league and getting to know them as well as humans and not athletes. And you guys know I struggle to separate the two. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to meet these athletes and figure out that they're great people, and I'm going to hammer their over every week. And then it's going to be like, well, here we go. This is what happens. So yes, very, very excited. It'll be great.
That sounds like an awesome opportunity. That sounds like that show would blow ours out of the water, Nate. So I'm going to call up.
Yeah, what's going on, Liv?
Maybe you and
First of all,
step back. We'll just let Liv and Deebo do theirs first, and then maybe if there's room, then we can see about getting ours going later. Yours with Kittle.
Listen, I gotta say this. I also think it's worth shouting out our brand new show that we released this week right here with Guerilla Sports. We Are the Harrises is going to be a really great watch and great listen. We have a lot of football coverage, but I am noticing that every week we have done off field here with Guerilla Sports, myself, Nate Jackson, and BK. The show has done better every single time. So we're very excited. AI sucks. Superfly says
Thank
AI
you, Superfly.
Yeah. The robots, we're sick of them. But no, off field to me is definitely I've enjoyed every second of it. And what's great is that the show has grown so much, and we're only in week 2 of the NFL season. We've got listen, guys, we're not going anywhere. There's going to be a lot of football content coverage. Like I said, we now have We Are the Harrises. Nate with Dumb Jock. I tried to tease that this morning a little bit with my Guerilla Sports Daily. I know that you released an episode today, correct?
Yeah. Yep. I had Jake Plummer on yesterday to talk
Love to see it.
About Bo Nix and his debut and just kind of his interpretation of it, because Jake was a rookie quarterback playing on a team that wasn't great and making his mistakes and taking his lumps. And so I had him on to kind of give his summation or interpretation
breakdown
of Bo's performance. So check it out.
Love it. This Cedric says, keep it up, guys. Love y'all. Go Nuggets. Yes, we will still have Nuggets coverage as well. Every Wednesday, 6 p.m., we'll have a show that goes out for off court, and we'll ramp things up a little bit. I'm actually going to have Jesse on with me coming up soon here, where he's going to kind of put me in analyst mode and ask me all the questions that you guys have about the Nuggets upcoming season. So we've got a lot of exciting things coming. We're going to start ramping up our Nuggets content, as well as obviously the Avalanche season is coming. So really, really exciting things over here at Guerilla Sports. And I'm feeling overly confident about what we've got in store and all the exciting things we've got going on. So we'll have another post-game live reaction show after the Broncos game this weekend, Broncos versus Steelers. We'll see if Liv Moods is on the right side of things. Are the Steelers going to come out on top, or are the fellas to my left and right going to come out on top and the Broncos are going to get it done? We'll have a post-game live reaction. I'm thinking I think, Nate, we ended up going live around like 5:30 and the game was at 2 p.m. So it'll probably be something similar. Just give us about 10, 15 minutes after that final whistle for us to get situated, and then we'll let it rip. So appreciate everybody for tuning in. Obviously appreciate Nate and BK. And we'll be back again for a live reaction on Sunday, as well as an off-field episode Monday and an off-field episode Friday. Just expect us basically in your face all the time. Fellas, anything else?
That's it. Go Broncos.
Go Broncos. Even though I'm thinking it's the Steelers, of course I am rooting for the Broncos. So let's go Broncos. Let's go Guerilla Sports. Let's go off-field. Thank you guys for tuning in, and we will be back again with more off-field on Sunday following the Broncos, Steelers, and Broncos home opener. See you then.
See ya.